The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we will recap Austin's 2-1 home victory against NYCFC. We'll also give some updates on our newest signings. We'll give our takes on Austin's quote-unquote sellout streak, and we'll cover all the other Austin FC news of the week. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined by maybe one of the only people who was glad to see a weather delay the other night. It's Mike Cragnola.
Hey, yeah. If it weren't for the weather delay, we would have showed up after the match was over. And so I'm pretty glad about it, Landon. I will take responsibility for the first goal in this New York City match because we weren't in our seats yet. But we had a long travel day. We were coming back from the beach in the Outer Banks. And the plan was we leave the Outer Banks at 7 a.m. We fly from Norfolk, Virginia. Oh, that was the most Massachusetts I've ever been. We fly from Norfolk, Virginia. Wow. To Baltimore. And then from Baltimore to Austin. And we land in Austin at 4:30. Everything is going great. We leave Baltimore. We are 20 minutes outside of Austin when we do a loop. And the pilot's like, they're not ready for us down there yet. So then we are looping for about a half hour. And then the pilot says, okay, change of plans. And the flight attendant comes on and is like, yeah, so we're going to be landing in San Antonio in about 45 minutes. And everyone on the plane was like,
then what?
yeah, right. No one knew then what at the time on the airplane. Turns out the pilot had hit their hours threshold, so they're not allowed to fly anymore. So they needed to find new pilots. But you can't just create a pilot.
Is there a pilot on board?
Right, yeah. And so we land in San Antonio and they're like, yeah, we don't know when we're going to take off again for Austin. So everybody can get off the plane. Obviously, at this point, I'm freaking out because we have a match to get to. Landon, we left the beach a day early to be home for the game. And so we decide to rent a car and we're going to drive from San Antonio to Austin. We get to the car rental desk. Everything is booked at every carrier. And so Steph is a genius and decided to get us a lift from the San Antonio airport to Q2.
Is that what you did?
Yes.
Wow.
And so we got dropped off. We go straight into the match. And as we are walking in, she goes, I think they just scored. We got to our seats. Team started playing better. I told everyone it was going to be a 2-1 win from the jump. Landon, I'm not saying it's my fault that they scored, but I am taking the blame.
Well, I'll give you credit for being an oracle and predicting the score, and I'll also blame you for the goal instead of Austin's defense falling asleep. All right, well, let's jump into the story of the week, which I think we have to start with the result. Austin comes back after giving up an early goal. That was Mike's fault. To beat NYCFC 2-1. I wanted to start the show off. I wanted to circle back to a couple of points that Jeremiah and I made last week, and one of them being a lot being said by fans and players and coaches about the collective effort given in Kansas City last weekend. Austin were pretty majorly outclassed in the opening minutes of the NYCFC match, which leads to this goal, but they kept grinding it out long enough to get back into this game. And then I think had some luck along the way with NYCFC not finishing chances, and then Austin finishing some chances whenever they got them. But I think we saw that fight back, and after coming out a little slow, being dominated by NYCFC. I mean, they looked really great on the ball, just zipping the ball around the field, playing the way that like what we want to do, what we're supposed to be doing. They're trying to do it and have players who can actually pull it off and just zipping the ball around the field constantly.
And a lot of that was the off the ball movement, right? Like NYC, every time a player didn't have the ball, but their team was in possession, they were moving and they were finding spaces and they were like exploiting the shapes that we were giving them. And that's something that I think we don't see a lot of normally when Austin's in possession, right? We see a lot of like players throwing their hands in the air being like, do something.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of it from Austin at periods during this game, but NYCFC was doing it pretty much the whole game and doing it really well. But like as I was saying, Austin put in the effort, put in enough fight to stay in it and get those 2 chances and then grind out the last few minutes and get out with the win. And so it was really good to see that back from them. Another thing we talked about last week was Owen Wolff. Jeremiah went all caps on Owen Wolff haters. And then
he was so good.
And then this week, Owen Wolff went all caps on Owen Wolff haters. He got a really nice assist for the match winner, 100% pass completion. He moved to the midfield, started on the right wing, and then moved to the midfield around the 70th minute. I think he was probably Austin's best player from that point on. And maybe even before that, you could consider him one of the better players on the field, but just really dominant in certain moments. And we'll get into those when we talk about the goals, but he was playing really boldly, playing with a lot of confidence and like providing the kind of ball progression that just does not exist in this team whenever Dani Pereira is not on the field.
Yeah.
And I hope that is something that he can build on for the rest of the season, because whenever you see him in those little moments, you're like, oh, this kid is special. But I feel like either the game circumstances or his confidence or whatever doesn't allow him to fully achieve that all the time. And also youth, right? He's young, he's still learning. But whenever he turns it on and is clicking like that, man, he's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I think it's tough too with our midfield build to figure out where to slot him in when like the rest of the roster clearly has this gigantic hole on the wing. And so when you put a kid in a position that he's not as comfortable with as others, maybe it's harder. I don't know. Like, I don't know. We'll talk more about kind of the actual match itself, but I thought Owen was outstanding. If it hadn't been for Jossie's brace, Owen's my man of the match for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could still argue for it, brace aside. Any other thoughts on these points, or should we take a break and move on to the rest of the game?
I just want every week for there to be a Moon Tower pats itself on the back segment. And I'm really glad that you're leveraging the Story of the Week feature to do that this week, Landon.
What else? What is it there for, Mike? All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more of the match details. When no one is around. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FVF.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FVF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. Let's jump into some of the pregame storylines before this one. So I think a lot of Austin fans, and I'm guessing probably the players and everyone who pays attention to Austin FC, was pretty down on them after that performance in Kansas City. And so I talked to a lot of people before the game, and they're feeling pretty down. And I was like, yeah, New York is good, and we were quite bad last week, but this is MLS. Like, I'm not predicting a win, but I believe I said the words to somebody before the match: they can't hurt me anymore.
Yeah,
and I was like, I'm expecting the worst. What else could happen? But also knowing this is MLS, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think E from the North End podcast and I have a very similar vibe going into an Austin FC match, which is that we're the best team in the world and we're never losing again. And so every single week I am ready to be hurt again. So that's how I was feeling going into this NYCFC match. We own the Eastern Conference. The only reason Nashville looked any good is because they were in the East. When they came to the West, they were a trash team. If we played in the East, we'd be the best team. It's science. And so I was ready for us to dominate this team.
So some of the unknowns, I guess knowns, but unknowns, what the effect would be is Diego Rubio was out on yellow card accumulation. I wanted, I guess, maybe take a moment. We gave ourselves a victory lap in the opening segment. In this segment, I want to make a formal apology to Jossie Zardes. I think
has earned it.
And a lot of other people were saying, there's no way Jossie can go 90 minutes. What are we going to do when he needs to come out of the game? Yeah. And Josh Wolff said in the midweek press conference when asked that, he was like, well, I mean, Jossie can go 90, so I'm not that worried. But we've got Seba that can go there. We can put Fodre there if we need to. But we're not super concerned about it. And at that point, I was like, maybe we're underestimating him a little bit. And I think what we were doing, most Austin FC fans, are conflating Jossie Zardes's being slow with him being out of shape. And I don't think he is out of shape. So we probably should have known that he can go 90. Like, he's running slow from the very beginning of the game, and then is running just a slightly slower at the end of the game. But I don't think anybody has ever accused him of being unfit. So maybe we should have known better.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make. And maybe also worth calling out that he's still a professional athlete. And so, like, his slow is still probably faster than almost everyone we know. Certainly, right?
Yeah.
And I think he showed the haters for sure against New York.
And then the other thing, we had guys out on international duty. So Julio Cascante's Costa Rica lost out of the Copa America, and he was back and on the bench for this game. Dani Pereira's Venezuela lost in the first knockout round on, I think it was Tuesday, or maybe, I don't know, sometime midweek, but it was a pretty tight turnaround for him to come back. And one thing I was unsure of is, was it far enough out for him to be serving his yellow card suspension? Because remember, going back to before he left for international duty, he got a 5th yellow card and was going to have to miss the next match, but then wasn't here for several matches. So he had a yellow card suspension waiting for him when he came back. I know Zach and E from the North End were paying close attention to this, and I was messaging Zach, and he was like, I don't think it's going to count because he was not showing up on the availability report beforehand. Finally, I think like game day, we got an updated sheet. Dani Pereira's name appears on it. So I believe this is as official as we're going to get, but Dani Pereira served his suspension against NYCFC the other night, meaning he will be available for Seattle next week, which is excellent news.
And that's something that they said on the broadcast as well, that he was serving the yellow card suspension. So, to me, I would be mentally preparing to see, yes, Dani, yes, party. coming up.
All right, let's get into the lineup. So it was not super surprising anywhere. I mean, with who we have, I think we talked about this last week. There's really only one or two possibilities here, and we got the other one this week, which was the back line of Gallagher, Heinzike, Weissman, and Biru. Then the midfield of Ring, Valencia, and Driussi. Owen Wolff on the wing instead of Ethan Finley. Jossi Zardes at the 9 and Hunter Obrian as the other wing.
Yep.
Starting off the game, like we mentioned earlier, NYCFC looked really sharp. They were dominating the first, I don't know, like the first 5 minutes, Austin barely even sniffed the ball. Yeah. And then for most of the next 10 or 15 or 20, it kind of
I was gonna say 20 to 25. It felt pretty one-sided. That field definitely tilted for sure in their favor.
Yeah, I think it was probably 15 minutes in when we get our first big chance, which we'll get to in a second. But Austin almost scores an own goal in the first minute of the game. I think Heinzike sticks his leg in to a cross and it bounces across goal.
It was Leo, but yeah.
Was it Leo? Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't miss the goal by maybe a few feet. I don't think it was that close, but it was too close for comfort. Then in the
broadcast angle made it look really bad. And so like I wasn't in my seat yet, so I couldn't tell you what it looked like up close, but the broadcast angle made it look pretty spicy.
NYC gets their goal in the 5th minute. Again, Mike's fault.
This one's on me.
Tavon Gray, their young fullback, I think he's homegrown actually, plays Hannes Wolff. So we're going to have to be careful with this. They have a player called Hannes Wolff with one F on their team. Their newest designated player. So Gray plays Wolff through to the inline. He doesn't really like what he sees, so he just kicks it right back out to Gray. And I think at this point, Austin's expecting kind of a reset or for them to swing it around, but Gray's ready to play in a cross immediately. And the Austin defense is just kind of falling asleep. And John Gallagher on the back post had Andres Pereira on his back shoulder. And whenever Gray puts this cross in, which it was a beautiful cross to Gray's credit, it had enough pace on it to make it hard for anyone to react to. And in the placement, like you needed to be in that spot to be able to defend it. And if you didn't react fast enough, and they did, which is what happened, it's going to be dangerous. And so Pereira makes a really hard run across the box. Gallagher is slow to react to it. And Pereira gets in front of him and he finishes it off from a few yards out, and nobody had any chance of stopping it once he gets to it.
Yeah, I will say between Johan, Biru, and Obrian, they let Gray and Wolff have a ton of space on that right side to cross it in. So, like, because I wasn't there drawing them mentally closer to close down these guys, like, that's on me, and I'll do better on Saturday for sure.
I can't recall exactly what Biru was doing in this one, but I've noticed a few moments. I've noticed a few moments in every one of the last, 4 or 5 games where he gets beat because he's in the wrong spot. Once he's like marked up 1v1, he's quite good in those moments defensively, but positioning wise and kind of knowing what he's supposed to be doing, you see moments where something happens and one of the center backs or Alex Ring is yelling at him saying like, hey, you're supposed to be doing this in this spot. And that happens a lot, which, I mean, it's not super surprising. He's still quite young. He's quite new to the team. And I think he actually likes playing with the ball a lot more than he likes defending.
Yeah. But I also think like with the rotational nature of our like defense, right? Sometimes people pop up in places where he's like, where did this guy come from?
Right.
Now what do I do? Right. And you can see him thinking through it.
And these are the experience things, right? Like these are the things that come with time and like trying multiple times and probably messing up multiple times. But a moment where someone like Brendan Hines-Ike probably makes the right decision, Biru is often going to make the wrong decision. And that's fine. He's so good in all these other moments that is worth the trade-off. But still a spot where he can grow.
Yeah, for sure.
Gray gets subbed out in the 12th minute. I couldn't tell exactly what was wrong with him, but he has to leave the game. They sub in a 19-year-old Slovenian named Ilinic. He probably should have had an assist with his first touch of the game. Plays it across, and I can't remember who hits it, but they end up kind of scuffing it or hitting it wide. And then he almost scores twice from distance later on in the game. I think one in the first half, one in the second half, with what I think were crosses that he hits poorly, and they end up one of them hitting the crossbar. Stuver, I don't think, had a chance on that one if it was a couple of feet lower. And then the next one forces a really good save by Stuver. But on both of them, I'm almost positive he was trying to cross the ball in the box and just mishits it and catches everyone off guard because everyone else thought he was crossing it too.
I will say this. If that ball goes in, he meant it 100% and would say it until he died.
That's what he would say.
Yeah.
But I know better. Austin finally gets their first big chance. A really nice passing sequence after a turnover. It starts with Zardes recovering a ball in the midfield, plays backwards to reset, and then there's, I think, 7 passes, and 20 seconds later, Zardes knocks down a Gallagher cross. He goes for a shot, and it gets deflected and kind of squirts out to Obrian on the left side on the far post. And he hits it pretty cleanly, tries to 5-hole the keeper, but I think it hits off like the inside of the keeper's thigh and bounces down and goes out for a corner. So, but that passing sequence was really nice. And you talked about the pass and move rotations. Biru makes a really nice run that I don't think any fullback who's ever played for us would make, where he like kind of runs inside and allows Väisänen to play a through ball into space because Biru sees that space and just like, I'm just going to take it. And Väisänen is good enough on the ball to see it and plays him through. But that kind of springs this whole sequence. And Austin gets up the field quickly and is able to create a dangerous moment from it, which I think that kind of gave Austin a bit more confidence for the rest of the game, and probably that confidence allows them to get that goal that comes a little bit later in the half.
Yeah.
Obrian had space up that left-hand side for a lot of the night, where as we were playing out of the build-up, NYC was playing fairly narrow and kind of shifting to the ball side and leaving that space there, which I would say against Austin FC is a pretty good way to play because we don't often hit that long diagonal pass. And when we do, it's not very good. And then whenever we do connect it, whoever's over there, which it was Rigoni for a long time, is probably just going to stand there and let you close him down and then swing it back around to the other side. And Obrian did that a few times. He seemed a bit ponderous at times. There were other times where there was nobody in the box or nobody making runs, and he had to swing it back around. But on this one, he does exactly what he's supposed to do. Ring hits a really nice diagonal pass and gets him a little bit deeper into the field. Obrian brings it down, takes the touch inside, sees Zardes on the back post. And Zardes' movement is good on this goal.
Yeah.
I think that backside center back, I can't remember his name, but he's the backup. That Risa is their starter, and he got injured a couple of games back and had to miss this one. That guy probably should have been marking Zardes a bit tighter, but Zardes' movement is elusive enough for him to kind of forget about him. The ball falls onto Zardes' head, and just a really nice, calm header back across the goal and tucks it into that far post. But I love like these cushioned headers. I like Driussi's header. I think it was the first Kansas City game. That's one of my favorite goals of the year so far. Mm-hmm. Just that cushioned header far side back against the grain of play, and the keeper is just like, what am I going to do about this? And that's what this one was. Really nicely done.
Yeah, I think this was one of those goals where Zardes is like, I've been in this league forever. And this backup center back, Tennessee is like, okay, sure. I didn't expect this out of you. And yeah, like the ball from Alex, I think, is the key in this whole play. Like,
yeah,
the number of times we've seen him either overcook that ball or like underhit it this year. Yeah. Like when he gets those right, it's like, oh, just only do that, please.
Yeah, so Austin FC very happy to go into halftime with the tied game. Coming out of halftime, New York still moving the ball really well in the second half, but nothing crossing the goal line. I think, again, thanks to a little bit of luck, but also thanks to a couple of really good saves from Stuver. I think about midway through the second half, Hannes Wolff cuts inside onto his left foot and strikes one with some venom towards that far post. And Stuver does really well to get down and save this one. The broadcast angle that they showed does not do this credit.
No.
Up from where my seats are, we had a really good angle, like right down the barrel of where Hannes shot from, and it was an amazing save from Stuver. Like one of the best reaction saves you'll see in MLS this year, probably.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter, it might have been Paul Fleets, say that Stuver was faster than gravity on this one. And it just like the visual of that is perfect. So shout out to either Paul or one of the Logans. I can't remember who, but either way, I think it was a Vertipendent podcast shout there, which just summed up that save.
Austin have another good chance missed by Obrion. I was probably a little harsh on Obi for this one in like during the game. It was a really nice kind of pass and move possession sequence, including I think Ring, Wolff, and Gallagher, and it ends up with Ring playing Gallagher through to the end line. He crosses it through. It takes at least one or two deflections and falls towards the back end, but it's still got a lot of pace on it as it goes through there. And Obrion has to react to that deflection and just kind of throw a foot out at it. And so I think it was a really tough one to actually control or do anything with. He just had to throw a foot out and hope he connected with it properly and didn't. So yeah, I'm not going to be too harsh on him for that one.
That one was a tough one from our seats. Like you could see him have to change his pace. And like when you can't hit that ball in stride, that makes it so much harder. The fact that he connected with it at all is just such a big step up from a lot of the wing play that we've seen over the past couple of years in Austin. So I won't be harsh at all on Obi on that one.
So this next spot is a note that you added talking about the press. Do you want to bring us into this one?
So like right after this little sequence of play, Austin gives up the ball and there's a moment in the 57th minute where we start the press. As always, it starts with either Seba or Jassi, and this time it was Seba, pushing against the center back. But what we don't normally see is the rest of the team react to that pressing trigger. And from our seats, we were able to see even the defense and midfield like all slide up together at once, and everyone moved as a unit to really close that space down. Obi comes in behind Seba to clean up, and then like it just keeps going. Next man pressing for a full minute, and we win the ball back like in the attacking third. Seba's all alone after winning it off the center back, and so he takes a rip. But like this is what we had seen a lot in the first couple of seasons with Austin FC. This full team press. Sometimes it would come off, and sometimes it wouldn't. But it stood out as notable in 2024 to see the press function appropriately.
Yeah, and the way that they were doing it, so they were not pressing all the time, but I noticed as the game went on that as NYCFC would playing out of the back, they were kind of sitting in that mid block. But as they move forward, if Austin was ever able to force them to play backwards, that was the trigger. And that was when Driussi and Zardes would kind of step and start that press. And sometimes if they'd play through that first little moment, they'd back off and sit into it. But on this moment you're talking about, they keep going backwards and they keep forcing them backwards and everyone steps. And I noticed that the center backs were doing a good job of being aggressive and kind of stepping into those pockets further up the field to block passes off, which they were not really doing against Kansas City. And
Right.
Alan Pulido just ate it up all night. And so they did a good job there. But yeah, I don't always like Austin FC pressing. And there's been games where they have pressed where I did not think they should have. And so I've been critical of the strategy there quite a few times, but I'll give them credit for this one where they knew, like, okay, if we press the whole time, New York is so good on the ball, they're probably just going to cut through us easily. And so we're not going to press all the time, but whenever they play it backwards, we'll take that moment of weakness, that moment of vulnerability, and try to pounce on it. And it worked a couple of times, and we were able to cut passes out and kind of get the other way and create something going the other direction.
Yeah, I thought the way they collapsed the midfield and like that, pushing that line way higher for the center backs and the fullbacks, like the way they were able to compress the field in that moment, like, is this something that we can do with a Leo and a Brendan Hines-Ike that we couldn't do with a Julio and a Matt Hedges? Like, is it because of the speed that we have on the back line, quote unquote speed that we have on the back line now, that allows us to play this way a little bit more?
I think also Johan Valencia, his skills lend themselves to this, like those moments where, okay, there is a press. We need those next two lines to kind of fill those holes. Valencia is good in those moments. He's just a little bulldog, and when in those tight spaces, he's good at cutting off passing lanes. Whenever someone does receive, he's good at putting a lot of pressure on them really quickly. And so I think he's really helpful in those moments. He ends up having to call for a sub in the 62nd minute. It seemed like something to do with his leg, hopefully just cramping. We haven't had press availability since then. I think Wolff wasn't quite sure what it was in the post-game media availability. So it didn't seem like anything too serious. But Austin ends up making a triple substitution. So Ethan Finley comes on for Valencia. That moves Owen Wolff into the midfield. Cascante comes on for Vicen, and that's his first minutes back from Copa America. And then Hector Jimenez comes on for Obrion. And so he goes to right back. Gallagher moves to the left wing for about 15 minutes until CJ Fodre subs on for Biru. And CJ goes to the left wing and Gallagher goes back to fullback.
Yeah. Positional flexibility, it turns out, can be helpful.
Yeah, this is like the exact reason why John Gallagher would be a good idea to keep around. But also maybe the reason why Austin would be able to trade him for a significant amount of money.
You keep doing this, Landon. I keep trying to give you the opportunity not to.
I honestly, I think I've like come full circle on it where I would like to keep him. I think as soon as Desler's ready to go, Gallagher is not a starter, but to have a guy you can throw on at like 4 different positions in a pinch, like that's great.
Yeah.
And to save those kind of roster spots with supplemental spot guys, you can like start to bring in more specialists if you have one guy who covers 4 holes.
Yeah.
The first play after those substitutions, Owen Wolff has probably a 30-second stretch where he looks undefendable. Nobody can touch him. He's evading tacklers, keeping the ball, drops it back, receives again, plays some little 1-2s, ends up receiving on the half turn, pushing forward with New York's back line on skates, plays a really nice through ball to Zardes around a defender. And Zardes takes a couple of touches, hits it from a pretty tough angle, and pings it off the far post in for the second goal, up 2-1. And so this is Jossie Zardes's 104th and 105th goals for his career. That puts him 10th all-time MLS leading goal scorer and the 3rd all-time leading goal scorer among active players.
Yeah.
And I saw someone online saying, didn't he break into the top 10 last year?
Yeah.
And he did. But then Joseph Martinez passed him again. And now Zardes has passed him again.
Yeah.
And so
it'll be an interesting race through the end of the season. Maybe.
So Zardes's last goal, I think, was about a year ago. And yeah, I mean, I know that myself and many others have been critical of Zardes and kind of have bad feelings about like the roster spot he's taking up and how little output he's given us compared to what we hoped or maybe expected he would give us over the last couple of seasons. All that aside, I will say I'm very happy for Gyasi Zardes because he just seems like a great dude and a guy who is great to have in the locker room, never stops working, has never like letting this get him down, like this dry spell he's gone through. And I on a human level, I'm very happy for him. On a soccer level, I think it was David Goss I listened to Soccer Wise, his new podcast today, and he was talking about how Zardes is a forward that needs service. And we've talked about Driussi also kind of being in a position where Driussi hasn't been that good, but it's probably not entirely his fault because he's not the creator 10. He needs someone else to kind of fill that role. And whenever nobody else is doing it, he stretches himself to try to do that and ends up not doing it very well and taking him out of the positions where he's most dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could maybe say Zardes has also not gotten that same service. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, if we had the right player around him, Zardes scores 15 this year, easy. That's not what I'm saying. But I think he would have more than 2 in the last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's a bit ironic that Diego Rubio is a better like playmaking, distributing 10, but just like a lesser player than Driussi. And so like, how do you get, is it possible to get those 3 dudes on the field together? But I suppose that's not a New York City FC conversation to have because my dude fouled himself out of this game. So he wasn't even able to be there. But I did want to touch because you had mentioned Owen Wolff like looking just undefendable in this build up to this goal. Something that I had forgotten about until right now was like halfway through the first half, Driussi had received a long ball. I can't remember if it was a failed clearance from New York or something like that. And he brings it down with this just filthy touch. And it's so perfect. And the way that he controls the ball and then swings it out is like gorgeous. He's the only player on the team that can do that, right? And then Owen, like probably 30 seconds later, receives a long ping from the midfield out to the wing and brings it down with an equally gorgeous touch.
Is it the one in the box where he shoots it?
It's like just outside the box. He like traps it down with the studs of his like cleat.
Okay.
You know, like, I mean, this
I'm thinking
ball
of
is
a different one then, because there's another one
flying.
where someone launches one over the top and he like has to kick his leg up over his head and bring it down.
And then
the
it's Driussi pass
and has to swing his leg up and over the ball to get over the ball to get the shot off, and then it goes off of a defender
for the corner.
I think it actually comes back off of him and goes out, but they give the corner to us. But I talk about how good of an athlete he is all the time, and this is a prime example to be able to get your leg up, drop it down, and then swing your leg up and over the ball to get the shot off. Like, that was really impressive.
Yeah, he does technical things that no one except Sebastian Driussi on our team can do.
Yeah.
Whether that's a half turn, whether that's finding that space, whether that's controlling the ball in a like absurd way, right? It's Driussi, then Owen, and then Biru.
So Austin have a few good stretches of possession going on. It stays like the intensity stays pretty high, and New York gets some good chances. Ring ends up needing a sub late in regulation time. I'm sitting here thinking, who the hell are we going to put in for him? We don't have any other midfielders.
That's it.
And so they put Hedges in, and I'm like,
classic midfield.
What is
Hedge.
this going to look like? And so what they end up doing is move Hedges into a back five, drop Driussi into central midfield with Owen. And like, I was like, okay, there's not much game left, so this isn't necessarily bad. And Austin's able to grind it out and see it to the end for the win.
Yeah. I told one of my section friends, Chuck, at the half that this was going to be a 2-1 nail biter win, and man, I didn't realize it was going to be so many minutes of biting my nails, but I was glad to see that it happened for sure.
All right, so with this win, that puts Austin FC in 9th place, 1.36 points per game. I should have done the math again, but
I've got
we're on the line in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
The good news is that, like, if you look at the point totals for all these teams, one win could potentially put us as high as 6th place.
Yep.
One loss could only drop us one spot.
Yeah.
But that being said, all those points, all those teams are still ahead of us. And so I think it's going to be this tight to the end. Maybe one team drops off, another team fights their way back up, but it's a good place to be in, but it's not a spot where Austin should be comfortable. They should be grateful that they're there and do everything they can to move up a little higher as they go.
We've heard that the goal coming into this was to be around 2 points per game at home and 1 point per game on the road. Right now, Austin's at 1.9 points at home and 0.82 points on the road. With a win at home or on the road, we'll be at 2-1. So, like, they're weathering the storm. They are getting through to this, this reinforcements arriving. It's just stressful.
Before we move on, are there any players you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question that sits in my brain far too often, and that's, is Alex Ring the most frustrating player on our team? And I mean, right, is that he's still so good that you can't drop him, but he's not good enough to justify his contract or the fit relative to the other players in our midfield.
Yeah, like he's like upgradable. If we're taking quality to salary ratio here, he is very upgradable. Like, it's not beyond imagination that Rodolfo Borrell can bring in somebody of higher quality for probably less money, or for that money, definitely higher quality.
Yeah.
But for the team we have now, like you said, he's unbenchable. We cannot not have him there. And he's not the best solution at any of the midfield positions, but he's good enough that you have to have him on the field all the time.
Yeah.
And so,
and it's like, it's crazy because he's got what I think is the best play of the season, right? That unbelievable tackle, and then the pinged ball to O'Brien for the assist, like back to back like that. Even this switch of play in this match, crucial for the first goal, right? Then, man, the number of like late challenges that lead to either penalties or free kicks right outside the box, and the number of like under hit balls or way overcooked balls that like aren't what we're used to from him, right? Like, it's so hot and cold that it like drives me nuts. I don't know.
I think I'm probably alone in that. I think John Gallagher might be next on my frustrating player list.
Landon, what is wrong with you?
But we have someone to replace him coming in very soon, who we'll talk about here in a moment. But I think for just like the roster spot, the salary, his role in the team, I think Alex Ring is absolutely the most frustrating player. And again, I think a lot of people hear that as saying like, he's not good, we don't want him here. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying, like,
right,
for his spot on the team, if we want to be challenging for trophies, Alex Ring cannot be a starter for us in 2025.
Yeah. I don't want to like leave us on a sour note, and so I do want to give a compliment that we didn't talk about to Jossie. At the end of this match, our guy is still fighting so hard. He does more corner work again, not quite as much as
I counted this one. I think it ended up being like a minute and 15 seconds that he mostly eats on his own in the corner.
Yeah, so it's, it's half of that like unbelievable, like almost 3-minute stretch last time, right? But still, it's so much time. At one point, he's drawn at least 3 defenders. You could argue 4 because there's the guy like hanging around back behind him in case he gets a flick on. Like, he's just doing so much work down there, and being so close to like our seats, it was unreal to watch him do this. Just so dominant in that moment. Like, that's the stuff I think that like I've said that like Jossie on any contract that is like up to max like salary, max budget charge.
Yeah.
Incredible. It's when it's double that it's like, oh.
Yeah. Hats off to Jossie for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about, we'll give some updates on our new players who have arrived to town. And then we'll talk, maybe get as close to hot takes as we ever do, talking about Q2's quote unquote sellout streak and some of the context around that. We'll also do our Seattle Sounders preview. Hang tight, we'll be right back.
Our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only advertises on this podcast because it's the home of the 2-time reigning Q2's champions, which is the most important trophy in professional sports. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. Fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage Real Estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, we are back. We're going to talk about Q2's sellout streak here in a bit. But before then, let's catch up on what our newest players are up to, and then also some honors for some of our young players. So first off, Ousmane Boukari arrived in town, I think 2 weeks ago at this point, got his first touches in training last week and was training on his own. I'm guessing he'll start training with the team this week. We don't have confirmation from that. I'm sure we'll probably get some pictures or videos or maybe something in the midweek press availability, but I would guess he would start training with the team this week.
He's got his 3rd nickname already, so it's coming, you know.
I think Wolff has called him Ozzy, Buki, and what was the other one?
There was a 3rd one. I can't remember what it was.
Maybe Buka.
Buka, yeah. And so we'll see which one of these
sticks. One sticks. Yeah. Also, Mikkel Desler arrived in Austin. I guess when was it? A few days back, maybe on Friday or Saturday.
This past week.
And so, I mean, we talked about whenever Boukari got here that was like the most ideal of the 3 new guys we have confirmed so far. If we could pick one to get here first, it would have been Boukari. If I could pick one to get here second, it's Desler. So
yeah,
as far as the order in which these guys are arriving, it's working out quite well so far. Still no news on Svatok yet, but we're fairly well covered at center back right now. We don't need him.
Yeah, I hear you, but I still think Leo Campana's arrival is number 1 on my list. Boukari second, and then Desler third.
What else we got? We have Gavin Wolff being selected to participate in the MLS Next All-Star game. which is clearly nepotism. He didn't earn it. It's just because of his dad, right?
I think it's because he's like 6'1,000 and 400 pounds of steel, who can jump to the moon, embodies everyone at his age group and adults.
There used to be another Wolff brother, but Gavin ate him.
Yeah, honestly, like he might still be in there. Like the dude is gigantic. He's already made his pro debut back in June with Austin FC 2. Like he's gonna look really good in the All-Star game, and I'm really happy for him to be there.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he looks like out there. Any other news before we move on to our attendance hot takes?
No, I think it's time. I think it's time that we tackle the big subject here, Landon.
All right, take the lead on this one, Mike.
Yeah, so this week our friends at We Are Austin TV shared a tweet that quoted Austin FC PR. Austin FC PR was talking about how the NYCFC match marked 64 straight sellouts, the longest active streak in MLS. The question We Are Austin TV asked is, should Q2 have been built bigger? Now, before we tackle that question, I think the kind of definition of what a sellout is should probably be broached here, which is tickets sold. It's
even so. I worked in ticketing in college at the Texas Tech University Athletic Ticket Office, and I would be sitting in the ticket office during a game and hear them announce the attendance at Jones Stadium there in Lubbock, and look out the window and say, like, there's half of the number that they just announced. And the reason being is that the way I think kind of standard practice in sports is not tickets sold even. It is tickets distributed.
Wow. Okay. That changes things even more.
And so I don't know what tactics MLS teams use, but I know for a fact that the Texas Tech Athletic Ticket Office on like the week of the game, if they knew they weren't going to sell it out, they would donate tickets to places, give them away to organizations, whoever. And whether those people came into the stadium or not, those tickets were quote unquote distributed, and they counted towards the attendance.
Interesting. So the question then becomes, other than Venezuela during Copa America, when is the last time you remember the stadium being actually full, Landon?
I think the last time I could say with confidence that it was full was the FC Dallas playoff match in 2022.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some games early in the 23 season where like maybe the home opener or something like, but that I think it was super cold that day too. So maybe not even then. But I know like after it became clear that like, oh, we're not very good this year, that it was definitely not ever full after that point of the season.
Yeah. And, you know, in my section in 107, I don't know if you have the same experience, but a lot of matches I will look around and it's still people that like I've never seen at a match before. You know, like I've got my pockets of like, oh, I've seen you at every single match since 2021. But then there's like a whole swath of people who this is clearly their first time. Like, is that an experience for y'all up there as well?
Yeah, we actually have, there was a family who had the 3 seats right next to us that we saw most of the games in 21 and 22. And then since then, I think it seems like they still have them and just sell them every game because it is different people every time in the seats next to us. There's some people behind us who are always there and they have their tickets and use them most of the time, but next to us and all along that row, like laterally from us, it's all different people almost every game.
Yeah. And so I guess that kind of brings in a question that I have about like what the factors are that kind of determine the stadium being full again. I think obviously, right, the first and most simple one is winning. If we're a winning team, people want to come and like be there and say that we're there. That to me is obvious. But like, what are some of the secondary causes, do you think, to Q2 not being as full as it could be every week?
I mean, I think that's the main one, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
I think you could say like star power, because there's some other teams in the league who bring in a big name from Europe or whatever. I don't know that Burrell is ever going to do that, or it's definitely not going to be a priority for him to do that. And so that one may be out of reach for us. We're probably not going to get a guy from, I don't know, like Giroud or like Messi's. Nobody's ever going to get Messi because there's only one of him. But the Kevin De Bruyne's, the Giroud's, the Marco Reus, like these kinds of guys, I would not bet on us getting one of those anytime soon. And so I think that's the other thing that you can do it. So I mean, if it is a concern for Austin FC, I think winning is the lever they should pull. But at the same time, they sold their tickets. Like,
right.
Maybe they're not that concerned about it.
Well, right. And so like from that perspective, right, then the next question becomes, okay, well, what about the secondary market? Because we know a lot of people, to your point, like your experience is that these people are all new every single time. In my seats, I'm seeing the same things, right? How do we turn a club from being an investment opportunity for season ticket holders that never go into a community that's there every week and is like pushing for the club to do better and to perform better, and like the things that we intrinsically believe about fandom? Like, should the club cancel season tickets for people who sell more than X% of their tickets to any given season? And if
I would actually really like that. I don't know that they'll ever do it, but I would really like that, because there are like the wait list. I'm sure it's not. I think when they started out, it was 40,000 people, 40,000 some odd people. And then they announced, I think even last year, that it was still in the 20,000s of the wait list of people wanting to get season tickets. As the team has been bad and as prices have gone up, I'm sure that list has gotten shorter, but it's still there. There is still a wait list. And I still, on anecdotal evidence, know quite a few people who would love to have season tickets and can't get them.
Yeah.
And so like looking at these secondary markets, I as a fan would love if like you sold more than 75% of your tickets for the last 2 seasons, your tickets get taken away and get sold to someone else. I don't think that'll happen, but I would like to see that. What I think, like Austin FC is looking at this resale value, and good tickets get sold for 50% markups regularly, if not more, for certain games. Even this year, last year, when we're bad, like tickets are selling for far above face value. I don't think you or listeners are going to like what I think Austin FC sees as the solution, but what I think they see as a solution is slowly raising season ticket prices until those two numbers kind of meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Because when they see those high resale prices, they're thinking, I want that money. Like we want that money instead of our season ticket holders profiting off of the season tickets they're buying from us. And so I think they're going to use the levers of the free market and say, we still have a wait list. We're going to keep raising these prices. And eventually the face value for a season ticket and the price being sold for on SeatGeek will not be so far apart from each other, but to the detriment of like loyal fans who would like to have season tickets, but maybe will not be able to afford to forever.
Yeah, I think that's like my biggest concern. And it's something that I am hoping, with all of these tickets going unused on the secondary market every match, that is something that factors into that calculus, right? Knowing that a bunch of these tickets are going up at, over face and just no one showing up to the games in those seats, maybe that helps combat that a little bit. I don't know. It's wild to see European clubs like try to raise prices for the first time in 20 years and then be like boycotted by the fans until they're like, oh, never mind. We just won't.
Well, in Germany, we're like fan-owned clubs where they're kind of making their own decisions about that kind of thing, and it's like regulated. But I mean, I know this is like soccer is not mainstream in America and like operates and behaves out of the norm for a lot of what is normal in America, but the business is still an American business.
Yeah.
And like the almighty dollar is going to rule all in that regard. And so they're not going to lower prices because the team is bad. They're not going to lower prices because they think you're a good person and they like you. They're only going to do it when the market demands that they lower the prices. And so far it hasn't. And so they're going to keep going up for the foreseeable future.
But
let's go back to the first question you asked though. Should Q2 have been built bigger? Because I don't know, I'm a little torn on it.
Yeah, I'm torn on it too. I would have loved an easier like roof raising structure to be built, right? So like if they decide, oh, actually we want to put a whole other bowl in here to move it from 20,000 to 30,000. An easy way to do that would have been great, right? But I love how small it is right now. And maybe that's like because I like that feeling of intimacy. I like that the furthest seat away is still super close. I think the sight lines for every seat are really good. But like I think we could have used at least 23 at the start, right?
I think my short answer is that I wish it had been built bigger, but not that much bigger.
Yeah.
And so something like Nashville Stadium, I don't know if you've been to that one or not, but I liked the kind of the footprint of that one where the sides feel a lot like Q2, but then on the ends, you have an upper deck on both ends that is very much like the upper deck on the east-west sides are. And so it's like a very similar viewing experience from not only on the east side and the west side, but also on like the north and south end. And I think I don't know, I think Q2 has a lot of charms for that it's open on both ends as far as like how it looks and feels, but I feel like having those upper levels on each end doesn't take away from that too much, and then also increases that capacity. But I mean, they've talked about having the ability to increase it by like another 1,500 to 2,000.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to be in a rush to do that at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they're kind of waiting and seeing, like, in 5 years, is that wait list still there?
Right.
But I think always they would rather it be too small and full all the time than too big and a little bit empty all the time.
Yes. And I agree with that problem in concept, except for when it shuts out fans who would otherwise be there every week, right?
Yeah.
Which is a different lever, I think, that you can pull to solve that problem. I do think the concourses need to be wider if we're going to increase capacity.
That's another thing I really liked about Nashville Stadium is their concourses are like twice as wide as ours.
Yeah.
And I think some of that has to do with like the actual footprint that the stadium sits on, that they were fairly limited with how wide they could make them. But regardless of the reasons, it makes for a pretty uncomfortable experience down in the concourse sometimes.
Yeah. I think your side of the concourse, where your tickets are, is a lot better than, say, the back of the south end. But like, even still could use with a little bit more room to breathe sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to change, though. That kind of is what it is.
When they build Q3.
All right, let's take a quick break. And actually, let's not take a quick break. Let's go straight
let's get into it.
Seattle Sounders preview. So, Mike, do you want to run us through kind of their current status and form?
Yeah, I'll play the Jeremiah here. I'm not going to give a history lesson because everybody knows that Seattle invented soccer.
That's right.
And so because we all know that, I will talk about where they are currently at, which is 7th place in the West on 31 points. They are owners of an 8-7-7 record, and their current form is a win, a draw, and then 3 wins in a row. We are currently 1-3-3 all time against Seattle, scoring 4 goals and giving up 8. And the last match that we played against them was a 0-0 draw at Lumen Field, where Austin technically recorded two shots, one of which was technically on goal.
Technically. So, a reputation that Seattle has gained over the years is taking advantage of the fact that you only have to be good for a couple of months in MLS.
Yeah.
1 year, I don't remember what year it was, but they barely snuck into the playoffs, were terrible for most of the year, got just above the line, and then made it to MLS Cup final. And normally, whenever a team has a reputation and people bring it up all the time, I kind of roll my eyes because it's well, yeah, that team technically did it, but none of the players are the same. The coach isn't the same. There's no continuity between the team that did that thing and this team. That's not true of this Seattle team. There's a lot of players who have been there for quite a while. The coach has been there for a long time. And so that culture still very much exists there. And those players have lived through that, at least quite a few of them have. And it, if the last handful of games, Seattle didn't look great for parts of the season, but they've won 3 in a row and have been unbeaten in their last 5. So maybe they are starting to kind of turn it on a little bit. And they've had a little bit of instability in their lineup. I know they have Pedro de la Vega. Did he get injured against Austin?
Let me look at this lineup. He did play against us and came out in the 63rd minute. So probably.
I think that, yeah. He's been fighting injury all year. He's come on as a sub their last 2 games. So exciting young winger that they were kind of banking their season on. It seemed like this was supposed to be the guy, and he just hasn't been there for most of the year. But he is healthy again and has come on to play when they needed him to. Nuhu and Rui Diaz, their left back and their striker, were both suspended for a match due to some type of argument or disagreement with Brian Schmetzer. Nuhu started last week, but there's been quite a few whispers about Rui Diaz being on the way out, or maybe this being his last season with the Sounders. That being said, they still have Jordan Morris, who starts at striker a lot of times. They have what's the other guy's name? Albert Rusnak playing behind him, but then the guy that the free agent that a lot of Austin fans wanted.
Oh, Danny Musovski.
Danny Musovski.
Who just makes the bench all the time and never gets minutes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, yeah, they've been winning without him there. Alex Roldan, who's kind of a fixture at right back. I think he had some injury problems, but then Paul Rothrock, young, I think he's 25, youngish winger, has been playing really well. And Christian Roldan has been pushed back to fullback or wingback at times because of how well Rothrock has been playing. So they've had some instability and kind of shaken things up a little bit, but it hasn't seemed to affected their form, really. They have João Paulo is back and healthy playing in the midfield. Rusnak is back healthy playing. And then they have
Leo Chu is back.
The front group of the options of Jordan Morris, Leo Chu, Raul Rui Diaz, Danny Musovski, Paul Rothrock, Christian Roldan, and then De La Vega's coming back, and they have that as well. So their scoring record is fairly good, but their defensive record is even better. I think they're 3rd or 4th fewest goals given up in the West, and I think a lot of that has to do with their center backs.
Yeah. Speaking of their center backs, one of them makes $98,000 and is on the senior supplemental roster. Jackson Reagan. He's really good, and he starts every game, and he's a supplemental roster player. Why can't we get any of those, Landon?
I don't know the answer. I think one thing that is going Austin's way a little bit this week is they are still in the U.S. Open Cup, and so they're going to be playing in California against Sacramento Republic on Tuesday night. The recovery-wise, that is a long enough stretch that it shouldn't affect them too much as far as like their legs go on the field, but it will eat into preparation time. They're going to have a lot of travel because they'll travel to Sacramento, then back to Seattle, and then have to travel to Austin as well. And so quite a bit of travel this week. Hopefully that will lend itself as an advantage to Austin. On as far as Austin's side of it goes, I guess what questions do we have coming into it? I think one of mine is who's going to play at striker. So we have Rubio coming back from suspension. I honestly would really like to see Zardes get rewarded with the start because Rubio had kind of a rough stretch.
Yeah.
Wolff has talked about wanting to, as
make
we get
players
deeper,
earn it.
Right, implement some more competition, which is a good and healthy thing to have in a team. And I think it goes contrary to that message and to that goal if you drop Rubio straight back into the lineup after Zardes scores a brace.
Yeah. I mean, unless training shows something different, right? Which we never get to see, but like, otherwise I think I agree with you, in a box, what we see is Jossie scored a brace. Rubio been struggling, can't stop getting yellows. Like, that's not a problem we'll have to worry about with Jossie. And if it is, there's a way bigger problem happening, right?
What else are your questions here? So
I want to know what everyone's injury status is. We had Alex Ring go out. We had Johan Valencia go out. Like Driussi's been up and down. Like I don't know. The hamstring issues that we're seeing across the team is worrisome. And so like who's actually healthy for this match?
Yeah, I mean, Rings seemed to just be cramps late on in the game. So I would be surprised if he weren't ready to go on Saturday. We've got Dani Pereira coming back, and so that kind of helps solve the situation if Valencia is not ready to go. And then if you still think Owen gives you the best option on the wing, you can put Dani and Ring in the midfield, Owen on the wing. And then if Ring needs to come out, drop Owen back, bring on Finley.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, other than that, we are who we are for
I think it's center back is another question as well. Like,
you think?
I mean, just like, do you put Julio's been a mainstay, like for better or for worse? Like, he's got pros and cons that we've listed many times.
He looked so good on the ball coming back in too.
He really did.
Like just so calm and so, I got this. Like in a way that we don't normally have out of the back of the field. So
yeah. So I'll be curious to see who's in the 11 coming into that one. But I don't know that there's going to be a ton of surprises based on just choices. I think a lot of them will be dictated based on who can go, except for Julio, which I think would be preference of whoever goes there. All right. Anything else before we wrap up?
It'll be a good one. And two more until the new boys come in.
That's right. Yeah, we'll have a big week to preview next week for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Come find us on the internet, on Twitter at elviajero87. And then Mike is at Future X Skeleton on many and most social networks. And then come find us at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Check out the Patreon. And thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with, like I said, a big week reviewing the Seattle match and then previewing the Copa Tejas deciding match against Dallas. And then the match against Charlotte, which is going to be the first one our new signings will be eligible to play in. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
And I'm Mike Cragnola.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothings you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.